to actually go ahead and say, you know, I have a mental disorder could have been enough to push people away.
In my head.
Here I am with my lollipop. Hello, hello. I'm trying something a little bit different today. I have a Band-Aid over my microphone, which is supposed to filter out some of the wind, although of course it's not windy at all out here tonight, but let's see how that goes. Hopefully it goes well. It's a little trick that I learned on YouTube, of all places, because I didn't want you guys to have to always bear with the wind and the car noises and all this other stuff, so hopefully that will help deal with some of that. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about coming out with a mental disorder, which I'm saying it that way because it's kind of funny, because when you are gay, lesbian, whatever, so if you got something that you know internally that other people don't know in some way, it's like you have to kind of come out and tell them if they don't observe it. So it's interesting, you know, every mental disorder displays a little bit differently, but when you know you have a mental disorder and other people may not know that, there is like a little bit of a coming out. So I wanted to discuss that. It's kind of like coming out. It's a little bit like you are telling people something that could be a reflection of yourself that's not taken well. Let's be real. People don't like to know that you have a mental disorder. That's a fact. That's why we have stigmas that I am trying to help fight with this channel, because unfortunately people still believe that having a mental disorder means that you're crazy, that you're unhinged, that you're violent. That's a big one. People with mental disorders are much more likely to be victims of violent crimes than to commit them. Let that sink in. So, you know, telling somebody that you have a mental disorder, depending on the disorder, can be a big deal. If you have something like anxiety, okay, some people can kind of understand that and be a little bit more relaxed about that because we know more about anxiety. It's more common, so people are a little bit more accepting of it. If you tell somebody that you have schizophrenia, it may not be received so well because unfortunately we have this image in our society, and I'm speaking for the United States, but I think this is pretty much worldwide, that somebody who has schizophrenia, for example, is not very stable, which can be completely false. Unfortunately, we believe these things. They are in our culture and we spread them around, and it's up to each of us to not make these things a stigma and to be careful with the words that we say. You know, if you have narcissistic personality disorder and you tell someone you have it, a lot of people are going to hear that and say, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. I don't want to hang around you because and I'm not saying this to harm anybody who has these disorders, but again, that stigma's out there and it sucks and it's BS, and I wish it weren't out there, and part of the reason why I'm doing this is to counteract some of that stigma. But it's a big deal. It's a big deal to say, I have a mental disorder, no matter what the mental disorder is. You know, if you have anxiety, that's still a big deal to come out and say that you have it, but there's different grades of it, and we all have to deal with it in one way or another if we want to let the people in our lives know. We don't have to let them know, but I think it makes our life a lot easier when we can just be open and honest about what's going on in our lives. I was thinking back to the mental disorders that I've suffered from, and I had generalized anxiety at one point, what I believe is borderline personality disorder. Those were not diagnosed. But when did I start talking about those? I only started talking about those after I already felt like I had healed from them. So the stigma was so real that I never felt like I could reach out about it. And this is something that they have studied, and I believe the number is it takes an average of 10 years for somebody with a mental disorder I could be wrong, it could be an anxiety disorder, but I believe it's a general mental disorder. It takes somebody an average of 10 years before they seek treatment. So that's a problem. We can't have that. But I only started talking about those disorders when I had already healed from them. So that was kind of interesting to think back on. And then more recently is something that's a little bit more interesting to talk about, which is when I had PTSD. And I have spoken about this on this channel a few times. I got PTSD. I probably had it for a while, but I only learned about it when I was breaking up. Well, my partner was breaking up with me. My last partner is a car. So he was breaking up with me, and our couples therapist at the time mentioned the word trauma. It turned out that I had PTSD. So I was afraid to tell people about it at first because, you know, I had a couple of close friends. I mentioned it to them. I felt okay telling them because I had already spoken about having borderline personality disorder before. So I had a little bit of comfort there in knowing that I can talk about these things and it's okay. And I had talking about some abuse that had gone on in a relationship previous to that where I was an abuser. So I felt like, okay, I got a handle on this. I can talk about these things, but still, I did not feel comfortable telling people that I had PTSD. And part of the reason was that I was in the middle of this breakup, and the circumstances of that breakup were such that my ex looked very innocent, I believe, to people from the outside. I don't know, because I haven't spoken to people. Most people just didn't want to speak to me. I don't know. I have no idea. But for whatever reason, I didn't speak with people. And so it looked, for all intents and purposes, that I was having difficulty. I was having these outward behaviors, and he was telling people that, which made it more incriminating for me. But he didn't seem to have any symptoms of anything himself. He looked like he was scot-free, happy, and healthy. And so I was afraid to say that I had PTSD because then it would look like, well, obviously Ryan was at fault in this relationship, and his ex obviously had to deal with this PTSD thing, and it just made me feel very ashamed and feel very alone and feel like I had to keep it quiet and not say anything, and that was incredibly frustrating. I felt like people were going to assume that I was the cause of the relationship breaking up. And because I had the outward symptoms of things, and I was always open and honest that I had anxiety, I just thought like, oh, well, clearly Ryan was the problem. Like that was going to be the attitude from people. And, you know, I lost a lot of communication with people after this, so I don't know if that was a factor, but it could have been. I don't know. So it's very, very possible that the choice that I made to actually go ahead and say, you know, I have a mental disorder could have been enough to push people away. I don't know. So that's a real thing, you know, that fear is real. I was also afraid that people weren't going to understand what PTSD is and maybe think I was making it up to try to look like some kind of victim or to try to, I don't know, garner sympathy or something. So there was that concern, you know, and trying to explain like what PTSD to people was like, I didn't know how I was going to explain it. I didn't understand it myself at the time. I was still learning, and if you need help understanding what PTSD is, I do have a series here on PTSD and trauma, all the little things that you need to know. It's a quick series. I took a lot of time to make sure that it is clear and concise. And I also did a video yesterday, so you want to check that out. That will be my experience with PTSD and healing from PTSD, but I was still learning at the time, and I was afraid to say that I had it because I was afraid that I was going to be looked down on, that it was going to look like I caused problems, that I was going to be blamed for everything, which is a symptom of PTSD because you already blame yourself for everything when you have PTSD. That's something that kind of goes on, and then I was afraid that other people were going to start blaming me, and I just couldn't deal with that. So I was very afraid to say I have PTSD, and I mulled over it for a couple of weeks there, deciding like, what do I do here? I don't know what to do. I knew in my heart that I was gonna have to say something because I don't feel right living my life personally without all my cards out there on the table, or as many of my cards as I feel comfortable with. And for me, that's usually as many cards as possible. So I knew I was going to have to do something, but there was a lot of stress around deciding what I was going to say, when I was going to say it, how I was going to say it. Despite my fears, I decided to post on Facebook that I had PTSD and do my best to explain it. I'm sure I looked a little bit like a crazy person when I did that, but that's okay. And you know what? Like I mentioned, I had lost a bunch of friends at that time, and there are different reasons why that could have been. Part of it could have been that, part of it could have been you know, for whatever reason, things that were going on with me and my ex, they decided to side with my ex over those things. It could have been my own actions, because at the time I had pulled away from people a lot because I was feeling a lot of this shame, I was feeling a lot of this fear, and so that pulling away from people may have been enough for them to just leave me in the dust. I don't know. I don't know the answers to those questions. What I do know is PTSD in one way or another could have played a part, but I needed to live in my truth, and I needed to speak my experience, and I needed to get it out there. So I took a leap of faith. I put it out there. You know, I found a lot of acceptance from a lot of people, so it wasn't all negative. And being able to speak about it and being able to learn about it and exchange information about it has been invaluable to me. And I found that out with borderline personality disorder. I found that out with talking about the abuse that I had gone through and the abuse that I also put on my ex. I find it important for me to be able to talk about those things, because in reality, this is my life. This is my life experience, and to hide those things, just as if I were to hide my sexual orientation or to hide anything else in my life, would just be being fake, and nobody likes to be fake. Nobody wants to live a life that isn't their own. So I needed to live my own life. I needed to be real, and that's what I did. I lived it as a real person living with a mental disorder, and you know what? Here I am, and I am so much happier having declared this, because I can talk openly about it, and now I can help other people who are going through PTSD and car coming. So I can help other people, and that is beyond what I would have. That's what I want. I want to be able to help people, so I'm glad that I have accepted that this is what's going on with me, because it helps me to help other people get out there and get out of the situation that they're in with PTSD. It lets me let other people know that you can move forward in life with this. You can heal from it. You can get out of that situation that you're in. It won't always be forever, and you don't have to be ashamed of it. So I say to anybody out there who has a mental disorder, of course, you want to be cautious. You want to be careful that you're not telling people who might cut off your access to resources. Unfortunately, there are people in this world who will do that. So if you need to be if you need to be careful about what access you have to resources, then you may want to be cautious about who you tell. But you should be able to tell somebody. If you need to go online, create an anonymous account somewhere, join a support group, then do so. It will be a great weight off of your shoulders to realize that there are millions of other people who are going through the same experience as you are. So I'm going to leave it at that. This was a short one, and I want to know, what has coming out with the mental disorder been like for you? What has it been like to know that you have a mental disorder and not tell people? How does that feel inside? I know it doesn't feel good. It felt really horrible for me. And then, have you taken steps to tell other people? Do you only tell certain people? Would you feel comfortable if everybody knew? I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Share those with the community, and of course, subscribe, hit the bell notification if you want to get notification of the bell, hit the bell icon if you would like to get notification of all of my videos when they come out. If you'd like to support this channel, support the work that I do, you can do so on Patreon. I have a link in the little notification bubble that should show up there somewhere. And thank you again for listening to everything that I have to say, because I appreciate that anybody cares. As I mentioned, other people probably don't care and left my life, so good riddance to them. I am here for the people who care.